Welcome to, what's today, April 9th, 2026, and the school committee will be called to order. If everybody could stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, public comment. Not seeing any public comment tonight. Recognition. Anybody? Okay, moving on. Ella.
Cool. So bear with me because there's a lot and I'm alone today.
Yeah.
But first we're going to start off with spring sports, which have been in full swing for over 2 weeks, which is exciting. Boys lacrosse is 2-1, girls is 3-1. Boys baseball is 3-2 following a win last night over Medfield, which is exciting. Girls softball also had an 8-0 sweep against Medfield last night and are currently 4-0. Boys volleyball, where Ryan is today, is 5-1 and going into a game at 5 versus Norton, which actually probably was over, so they probably did win. Boys tennis is 2-0 and girls tennis is 3-0. Home games tomorrow include girls varsity tennis at 4 at the tennis courts and girls JV softball at 4:45 on field 6. So show up and cheer on the Hillers. Okay, events. Spring is very busy at the high school, but there's some amazing things students and staff are organizing. First, Music Production Club is hosting their Garden of Sounds open mic night tonight from 7 to 9 in the auditorium, and it's a showcase that offers performances from a variety of students. And it sounds like very exciting. Best Buddies Prom is held tomorrow and is at 6 p.m. in the cafeteria. If students want to attend, it's $5 and a great way to get involved with the club. Tomorrow marks a day of silence, a nationwide movement to protest the silencing of LGBTQ+ identities. Additionally, after school, students are encouraged to attend the second annual Break Your Silence game night at the library, public library, from 3 to 5, and all LGBTQ+ teens and allies are welcome to join, whether or not they participated in the Day of Silence. In honor of Poetry Night, or month, Hopkinton Center of the Arts for Teen Advisory Board is hosting a night to share and enjoy poetry. The teen-only event is held on April 11th from 6 to 9 at the HCA. Hopkinton's class of 2027 is holding a raffle for the chance to win a painted H logo on the end of your driveway to demonstrate your Hillers pride. 5 winners will be selected, so 1 ticket is $20 and 3 tickets is $50, but if you want to secure your spot, you can do a $500 donation to the class. Which
hostage.
Yeah. And the raffle ends on the 15th. There's more details in the memo. The class of 2027 prom was announced to be May 8th from 6 to 10 at a hotel in Worcester. Auditions for one-act plays were held on the 6th, where students prepared a 45-second to minute-long monologue, and the one-act play festival will take place during the art show on Thursday, May 14th. And then lastly, the class of 2029 announced they're holding a Six Flags field trip for the end of the year, which is exciting for freshmen. The news announcement there is that they're on sale on My School Books right now. And lastly, for seniors, tomorrow is Senior Skip Day, which is exciting.
What?
You condone this.
I'm not supposed to know about it, but now it's on the public.
And it's a fun way for class of 2026 to celebrate the year wrapping up. And with that, seniors will begin the senior project after April break, making, which is the 27th, making next week the last week of regular classes for the seniors.
Ooh.
Wow.
Yeah. All the stuff.
Very
I have to
exciting.
do.
Very exciting.
Feels like it flew, huh?
What?
Does it feel like it flew by?
Yes. Yes, it does. I mean, I'm going to be in school a decent amount after break, but it's still crazy. Yeah.
Awesome. Nice job. Well, thank you very much.
Superintendent's report.
All right. Can I just grab the Apple TV, please? Is it possible? Okie dokie. All right. Well, hello, everyone. It's nice to see you all. Oh, it's off again. It was on, it was off.
Fly by.
I'll tell you, we did
Rolling
practice.
ornaments.
We
Is
did
this
practice
going Mary?
ahead of time. This was practiced ahead of time, I promise. There we go. Awesome. All right, well, it's good to see you all. This is the superintendent's report for April 9th. And as I like to do, we'll just look around the district over the past few weeks since the last time we've met. And we'll start at Marathon School, who continues to make learning fun in meaningful ways. Pictured here on the left is Miss Gadsden's first grade class, where I recently observed some students collaborating and experimenting with science on some hands-on work. They were getting to know some mealworms together as a group, which was interesting. Next in the middle is an interactive physical education class with paraprofessional support that kept kids active and working in teams with their classmates, which was great to see. As well as a visit from the Pumpernickel Puppets, sponsored by the HPTO. Students not only enjoyed the performance of the 3 Billy Goats Gruff and the Lion and the Mouse, but they also found out how puppets work, how it's brought to life, and all of these experiences just highlight the engaging opportunities that we have for our youngest Hillers. Elmwood has also been very busy. They held a recent PBIS assembly with Fire Chief Doherty in attendance to congratulate our March Madness reading winners. These assemblies, I've gone to a few of them this year. There's always such positive energy and school spirit. It's always nice to see. But I think my favorite highlight of this whole report, I'm going to go back, it was seeing the second graders supporting their third grade MCAS buddies recently. So as you might know, students across the district were taking their ELA MCAS in the last few weeks. And in Elmwood, each second grade classroom partners up with a third grade classroom, creating posters, notes of encouragement, and just cheering on the third graders for the first time that they take the MCAS. So you see 2 posters there. One is a haiku on the far right, and in the middle is one that says, "Just popping by to wish you good luck" from Miss Kelly's class. So it's really cute. So small gesture, but I think it goes a long way and a great example of the care and the connection and community that we have at Elmwood. At Hopkins, the book fair recently wrapped up, and it was a great success. I also had the chance to swing by and see the excitement firsthand. Students eagerly exploring books and sharing recommendations and leaving with some new reads in their hands. It's always great to see the energy and excitement around reading in the district. So a big thank you to our parents and staff for organizing, as well as the staff at Hopkins. The middle school also continues to demonstrate some strong collaboration and leadership both within and beyond the district. Recently, we had some middle school staff pictured on the left, Miss Oles, Mr. and Mrs. O'Connell, and Mr. Church, along with Dr. Ghosh, partnered with colleagues from Lawrence Public School to share how we use Schoology, which is one of our learning management systems, to support teaching and learning and to also showcase some of the great work that's happening in our classroom. So kudos to that group. We also had a proud experience of our students going outside of the classroom. We had a recent field trip for a group of our middle schoolers to the Worcester Ecotarium, chaperoned by Mr. Lefebvre and a few others. I got about 150 text message pictures from Mr. Lefebvre, so he was very excited. Had a wonderful time. You can't really see there, but he has a huge smile on his face, but it was a great day for the students and staff. And the high school continues to excel both in and out of the classroom. In these photos, you'll see highlights from a recent HOSA conference, which is the Future Health Professionals of America. It was their national conference. We had 71 students compete, which I believe is the most ever that we've had, and 15 of those placed in the top 3 in the state in their respective competitions, which is really impressive. We also brought 35 middle school students, which was the most middle school students we've ever brought, and 3 of those students ended up in the top 3 in their respective categories. So a strong pipeline to come when it comes to HOSA. I know we mentioned this last time we met, but I didn't have a photo, so I wanted to go back to it. We were excited to welcome 25 students from the Yamagata High School in Japan last week. You see the picture here in the high school auditorium with some of the students that helped our friends from Japan walk around the school and get to know some of our staff and students. It provides a meaningful opportunity for us to exchange, cultural exchange and connection, and highlights the opportunities our students have. We've been doing this since 2014, so it's a really nice tradition that we continue to do. From the district perspective, I want to congratulate our music department on some real success at the recent MICA Festival. As you see up here on the screen, for our middle school, the 8th grade orchestra received a silver medal, the 8th grade chorus bronze, the honors chorus also a bronze, and the 8th grade band received a silver. And then in the high school, the chorus got a silver, and the orchestra, concert band, and symphonic band all got gold medals, which is pretty impressive. And the gold medal recipients do get entered into a lottery to perform at the MICA Gold Medal Festival. Cool. I think it's April 12th at the Groton Hill Performing Arts. So I'm excited for that, so congratulations to Mr. Hay and all of the students and all of the staff. A few school community updates for next week. With the help of the HPTO, both Hopkins and Elmwood School will be hosting a fun run leading up to the marathon, which we're hoping will be a great event that will bring students, families, and staff together while supporting our schools. And CPAC is also hosting a coffee hour for parents at the library next week on the 14th, providing an opportunity for families to connect, ask questions, and engage in conversation. And then our Top of the Hill spotlight this week. We recognize two really important groups. First, it was National Paraprofessional Day on April 1st, and this week is the National Assistant Principals Week. So these are often, for different reasons, the unsung heroes of a lot of the schools that we have. Buildings don't really operate effectively without these groups. I know as a principal, I wasn't as good of a principal if I didn't have really strong assistant principals. So I know we have a number of paraprofessionals across the district. We have a wonderful group of assistant principals. We just want to thank them for their effort and the care that they put into it, and highlight them as the spotlight for this week. So,
That's great.
yeah. And that is the superintendent report for tonight.
Thank you. All right, school committee chair report. It's all about the payroll warrants. S26018, S26019 have been approved, and warrants 26110S, 26111S, 26112S, 26113S, 26114S, 263SAMS, and 264SAHS have been approved and are included in your folder. And just huge thanks to the accounting team who works very hard and are accommodating my trip next week by getting their warrants in early tonight. So I don't have to lug 2 computers on my trip. Very nice. Liaison reports.
So ESBC, I don't want to step on your toes, but I did want to, John Graziano, who's the chair of the Elementary School Building Committee, presented to the Select Board on Tuesday night to give an update on the project. And one of the things that he had invited the Select Board to do would be to take a tour of the site. And I thought it might be nice if people on the school committee were interested, that we could
I
coordinate
said
that.
the same thing.
I would like that.
I think
I'm not
we
going
all
to steal
should
any more of
work.
your thunder.
Do we know any dates?
No, but we could coordinate that certainly
Yeah.
with John Graziano, potentially coordinate with the select board if that's
That would be really nice.
a possibility.
They are also going to touch base about the how the transition plan might be working for getting into the new building. No, go ahead.
Yep, the Sustainable Green Committee is excitedly moving forward, collaborating with Mr. Lebrad on the Safe Routes to School. And I think they're excited about the tray washer in the high school, which will cut down on single-use items. They're working hard as always behind the scenes.
Great. Sounds good. I feel like there should be more to report, but I guess not. All right, we're moving on. We have some guests here with us tonight. Ms. Beatty, Ms. Murray, and Ms. Ellum. Going to talk about disproportionality report. Boy, I can't. That's not easy to say.
All right. Ready?
You can help Ella with our homework, too.
Yeah, there you go. All right, we want to thank you for having us. And it is a mouthful, so we often just shorten it to Dispro, so you'll hear us saying that quite a bit throughout this.
Yeah, thank you.
But we did want to just give you an update as far as where we're at from DESE's Dispro findings of the district, what that exactly entails, and then the work we've done all year. I asked Nicole and Sarah to join me. They've been an intricate part of helping me dive into the work, but we also have a pretty wonderful committee that helped in addition to them, but they had to come to DESE trainings with me, so they're in for the nighttime event here tonight. So I just wanted to start by, for those of you that don't know, or for those of you at home watching, this is really important to dive into this work, and really DESE gives districts the importance of these findings is not to necessarily point out flaws, but really making sure that we're doing equitable work here for students and making sure that we're not unfairly funneling students into special education, into more restrictive environments, into more harshly assigned discipline. And so there's a variety of ways in which districts can be found disproportionate, and we'll dive into what we are tonight. If you want to go back one slide, please, Bishop. I just want to give a big thank you. This is the committee. So Jeff Lebrard, our assistant superintendent, Sarah and Nicole were part of this. Beth Callahan, who's now the Elmwood team chair, she started off coming to these meetings as she worked in the director role, but continued her work in the committee despite shifting her role into team chair. We had Jess Burton, a school psychologist, on here, Tanya Lamoureux, the Hopkins assistant principal, and Jen Hines, the Elmwood assistant principal. So I just want to thank them publicly because it was a lot of work and it did pull them out of important jobs they need to do on a day-to-day to help us really dive in and really determine what our next steps are to move us out of these findings. So with that, when we talk about disproportionality, we also presented this to our full admin team as well, because it's really important that we're in this work together. This is not a one person, one committee. It's really the district as a whole working on this. And DESE's really working to ensure that students from subgroups are not over-identified, really. So we're looking at these areas, and really the job of the district, once they're found to have disproportionate findings, is really to examine their policies, their practices, and their procedures, and make sure that we're making corrections to that if need be, to make sure that we're really providing equity for all students and making sure we're identifying them appropriately. And it doesn't mean that we're not going to, determine eligibility, or we're not going to discipline students where they need to be, but really are we doing it appropriately, and we're not focusing on one subgroup over another. So that's the important part of this. Go ahead, sorry. I need a clicker. When DESE is looking at this work, it's really over time. So it's not meant to be a snapshot of 6 months of a school year. They look at year-based data, but they're also reporting it the year after. So when we get to our findings, it's reflective of over time, because what they don't want is just a one snapshot. They want to see that it's in fact a systemic problem and not just by chance a group that comes through or a certain factor that would skew that data. So when they are looking at it, they're really looking at these key indicators that we've outlined here. So the identification of disability category and placement. So where are we at so far as where we categorize student disabilities? Where are students educationally placed? In years past, we've had certain subgroups where we fell in dispro because there were too many in a sub-separate setting, right? So they're looking at that. How much is inclusion versus sub-separate? And what is that based on? What are those determining factors based on? They're also looking at disciplinary action. So making sure what are the incidents? How often are we suspending? What does it look like? Are we doing other methods of disciplining so far as, restorative practice and things like that? And really looking at academic outcomes overall. So looking at that in reflection of all peers across the entire grade level or building. Go ahead. So where we have landed over the past few years, and I wanted to not highlight that, but highlight that in the sense that this is a really challenging, disproportionate category to come out of. And when we, as a team, went to DESE held through, they hired a contracted service provider, SPED Strategies, who works with districts to create action plans, and then they work with DESE to ensure that all these districts are doing what they need to. What we found, our disproportionate finding is that we are over-identifying white students with specific learning disabilities, or SLDs. You might hear that acronym used on IEPs. So that is where our over-identification is. When we chatted with other buildings, or other districts, they strategically did this, is kind of place you with similar districts in size or makeup, and are you in the similar dispro categories? And we found that we were. This is a really hard category to sort of get out of, and that's why we made note of. We've been targeted in this area since the 22-23 school year, it came to our attention by DESE the following school year. So we've been working hard on this, and I know Abby last year presented this too as a similar category of findings in what we are going to do. And so we looked at, over time with the committee, is what did we say we were going to work on as a district? What of that can we still maintain, and then what do we need to add to that, right? Because clearly, we're not moving the needle as quick or as fast as we want to, which may not happen, right? But we want to make sure that we're hitting all the markers to move us out of that category, if at all possible. So looking at how it's calculated, I want to put up a bunch of math here for you. They do have a formula that they use. And really what they are looking at are those key indicators that we talked about before, and dividing that by overall the peers in that grade in that building across the district. That's how they're looking at these findings. So they're, for us, looking at what they captured is a high rate of students that are marked or categorized for special education under SLD. So then they look at specific learning disability, how many of our kids across the district are categorized as that under their IEP, and then is there any specific subgroups that are constantly being marked as that? And what they found is we are disproportionate with our white students being categorized as the primary disability in for an IEP under SLD. We have been marked as this over the past couple years, and on the next slide, if you want to shift over, I'll show you where we fell. So per DESE, you need to show improvement over 3-year periods of time. What they are looking for is either a 3.0 or a 4.0 is where you're going to get flagged, right? So we are, since 2023, 4.71. Then we dipped and we went down to 4.13, and then we kind of bounced back up again to the 4.21 last year. So really, what they are looking at, dependent upon where you fall in DisPro, they look at either 3.0 as your flag or 4.0. Because we are under, in this, an indicator 9 and 10, which means really that indicator 9 is looking at identification based on race, so white students, and then indicator 10 is based on learning disabilities. Are we flagged in an area that is specifically to learning disabilities? And so that's where we've landed, and it's our work to get us below the 4.0. That's really our work. Once we get there, which we did in our last DisPro finding of students that were sub-separate, is then you're just kind of remain on watch, and they watch that category for the next 3 years to show, okay, let's hope that they're going down, right, or remaining the same. So that's our work. 4.21 to get under 4 is not too challenging, right? We want to show some dips. But one of the things we talked about, and before I hand it over to Nicole, who's going to talk about the work this year, is I don't want our staff to feel like they cannot find students eligible for SLD. That's really important. It's really important work that we're doing. And it's important to stay true to where our students are, right? And so this was one of the conversations we had with DESE at our training was, okay, but I'm not going to just say to staff, don't identify them, right, if that's where they fall. So we looked at other factors of why is it that white students over any other student group is being found eligible for SLD, and are we categorizing them appropriately, right? We often see students on IEPs from multiple different disability categories. So is it truly their primary and what we're writing their IEP for, or were we not aware and we were kind of miscategorizing that disability? So not that they don't have it, but is that their primary disability? So that's kind of in a nutshell what DisPro is, so everybody here and at home knows. I'm going to hand it over to Nicole.
Yeah, so I get the more exciting slides of what have we been doing this year. So I'll give you a little bit of an overview. As Jess said, at the start of the school year, we created a district committee. As you saw in what Jess shared, that committee provided us a lot of different perspectives from across the district. So, I appreciate everybody's help that was on that committee, just bringing their experience throughout the district so that we can all come together to say, what do we need to do? And then that subcommittee of Jess, myself, Sarah, and Beth Callahan went to the DESE trainings led by SPED Strategies. really the objective of going to those trainings is really to understand what they wanted us to do for the action plan. So we did a lot of case studies, practicing, kind of going through how do we have these conversations with our group. What I found, and just kind of alluded to this a little bit, what was really helpful is to speak with other districts who are similar to us. What are their experiences? Where are they found being found disproportionate? And then that helped us understand what's going really well for them, what are some things we can reflect on. So that was really helpful, along with obviously the training that we received and then the process. We also were assigned a liaison from SPED Strategies. So she was incredibly helpful in the direct work on our Hopkinton-specific action plan. So she met with the three of us a couple of times, gave us feedback on our action plan, and then we would revise as necessary. And then when we did our final submission to DESE, we met with her one final time, and she gave us some pretty positive feedback that we're hopeful we will also receive from DESE. So we're kind of waiting for their response on that. As Jess kind of said before, their goal for us as a district is to show improved data over kind of an extended period of time, 3 years really. And that's not to say we need this significant drop, but each year we need to show that we're making improvements. So you can go to the next slide for me. So I'll talk a little bit about kind of that like nitty gritty of the work. So the first thing we really did as a committee was create a success gap statement. This is really driven by what DESE is expecting of us, so not terribly creative, but is what we need to do. The part that is great for us to really dig into here and for the community to know is what are we going to do about it? And so when we were talking, one of the kind of non-negotiables for the committee was that we were not approaching this through we will not qualify just so we can get out of DISPRO. That was like a non-negotiable. That's not what we're doing. But we wanted to look at, are there things we can do within the district that's going to help strengthen really what's up there is a multi-tiered system of support, so MTSS. And you've heard that, of course, throughout the year. It's something that the district had already been working on and diving into. Healthy school districts have really great MTSS, and Hopkinton is doing a great job in kind of developing what it looks like for us. So that's one place that we're really looking to dig deep into, and Sarah will get into in a little bit. What does that look like? How do we all kind of intersect within this work? Just that it's not working in silos. This is not just a special education. Yes, it's special education DISPRO finding, but we all know that special education students are all of our students. So it's important for us all to engage in that work. So when I say MTSS, we're really looking at our Tier 1, really specifically ELA, because that's where our specific learning disabilities tend to lie as we look through our data. It's within our reading and our writing. So consistent implementation of Tier 1, making sure we're assessing our students. When we are strong there in the assessment of how our students are doing, it helps us to identify Tier 2 and Tier 3 supports, so those really targeted interventions. When you do that, our special education referrals become more targeted, right? And so the other root cause that we want to really look at is the special education eligibility process. That is taking us from our referral. So when we receive a request for an evaluation, we know what the referral question is. We have a really we know where the student is. We have some really good baseline information on a student. And then that allows us to do targeted comprehensive evaluations. And then when we get to the meeting and we talk about eligibility, we're going through that flow chart. Everybody has a shared understanding of the educational disability categories. And in this case, right, that's looking at specific learning, knowing what a specific learning disability is, what it is not, what are some exclusionary factors that the team has to consider in order to be eligible. So really making sure that we provide enough PD for everybody in the district to really understand what that means. And so all those two things together, we really feel like can just strengthen our work as a special education department, but also just as a community. And I'll hand it over to you, Sarah, to talk about what that looks like.
Okay.
Next slide.
Yep. Yes, please.
So when we
now moving forward, we talked about where the work we've done this year intersects with all of this, but also what we need to do moving forward. So thinking about what we need to set for goals, and there's been a lot of really good work going on this year with different committees. So we've mentioned the DISPRO committee that exists already that has been working toward this, but these district committees have been launched that have been working this whole year in these various areas. So the Elementary Literacy Task Force was launched this year, and they've done really important work. It's made up of people from K through 5, CTLs, teachers, our literacy director, Jeff Lebrod. So they've done really, really good work looking at our literacy, but also defining what we want it to be in Hopkinton. So really creating a mission statement of what is elementary literacy, and in a visionary way. So maybe what it is now, but also what we want it to be moving forward. So they've worked really hard and have explored a lot of different, what are we doing, what do we need to do, where might we want to, where are areas for growth. So they've done a lot of work in that. So as we move forward with this goal, I think they will be really important, looking at how that connects. What are we doing with literacy, especially as we look at that tier 1, and then what do we need to do with tier 2 and tier 3? So how is that MTSS going to work in reality once we kind of discover what it is that we're all doing in tandem? Another task force, the PLC task force, was also launched this year, and that again has been comprised of members from the whole district, really talking about what are we doing in our professional learning communities, which is where we can do a lot of discussion about data and thinking of how do we get better outcomes for kids? What can we do to affect student learning? Looking at kind of how our teachers are talking to each other and collaborating with each other. So we've all come together to talk about what do we want this to look like in our district and in reality. So I think some people have mentioned it becomes really difficult because of barriers like schedule, because of demands on people's time. So what can we do to make it easier for people to collaborate and have really good conversations about how to best meet the needs of kids? So that's what this committee's done. A lot of work, again, kind of exploring what we're currently doing, but looking at what we need to do moving forward. The LST task force is also another one that is looking at our LST process in the district and trying to make it more consistent. So thinking about, are we doing the same exploration in each school, and how are we going to shore that up to just know that our data is consistent moving forward? So does the process look the same in every building? Are the teachers operating in the same way with how we might refer someone or what the data tells us? And again, I think all of this will just lead to more consistency. So as we noted in the root cause, we observed that there seems to be some inconsistency in places, and I think Evan's entry plan mentioned that sometimes it's that alignment where we need to just bring more clarity. What are we doing with PLCs? What are we doing with elementary literacy? What is the LST process? So all of it kind of falls under that same, can we be more consistent and define it as a K through 12 process? And then our best practices playbook task force is really putting it all together. What does it look like to have really good tier 1 instruction? What does it look like to have really good tier 2? And that is differentiated. So there isn't one answer to that one. So that one becomes a lot more complicated, but your tier 1 has to drive that. So you have to talk about what does good, solid tier 1 instruction look like? What do those assessments look like that allow you to ask, am I instructing what I need to instruct? So that was a lot wordy of what these task forces are doing.
What does LST stand for?
The learning support team. So there is a process, and every building does look very different-ish of how they operate. So that's really just kind of defining what do we do as a district, and is it consistent? Is it giving us consistent data all the way out? And then the trainings, I can't see very well. Thanks. I need the bigger one. Yeah, I should have brought my glasses. So the trainings that we will need to be doing with our educators, with our staff, as far as the eligibility process, that one that we've defined as an area that we need to work on, we need more training for our staff. So what does that eligibility process look like? When you do an eval, is it consistent too? So do they look the same? And they will look a little different because of the age of the kid, obviously, and what we're doing, but is it clearly defined? Do the people who are doing this process know what it should look like? So all of those questions, again, back to that idea of just making sure everything is consistent and there's clarity around what these are. The MTSS trainings we have been engaging in, so those will be ongoing, and they will absolutely connect to kind of what is already over on the left, this idea of what are those task forces going to tell us as far as where we need to move, and then what trainings do we need for people. So MTSS is so complicated because all the tiers are very much driven by data and what we see with the human beings in front of us. So that training will look like what it needs to look like based on what all of this reveals to us, which seems kind of murky, but it's just that it's all so intertwined in this idea of where we need to do this work, and it's really important work, but hard work as well. So asking these questions is kind of our entry point. And then the training for the LST process. So once we define what it really should look like, we need to ensure that the people doing it know what that is, so that they are aware of what the process needs to look like, feel confident as they do it. Because I think some of that too is if people aren't sure what it should look like, and then it feels like, am I doing this right? Am I doing the process with fidelity that's going to make sure kids are getting what they need? And then professional development, I mean, it is kind of a buzzword of we need to be developing people professionally, but that will also be driven by what these task forces tell us. So what is it we need more specialized PD in? Is there something with elementary literacy? Is it the PLCs that need a little more support? So I think all of these task forces will tell us where we need to go with education and support.
So with that, that is our work thus far with DISPRO. You'll hear more about it next year. Certainly, the committee will kind of remain as such and help move the work throughout the district. But didn't know if you had any questions. And if
I
not,
do.
that's okay.
I do have
Yeah.
a question. First,
Yes.
it's fabulous presentation. You brought it to a level that makes it, for those of us who are not educators, to really understand what you're doing, and it looks like great work.
Great.
Well, we're looking at the disproportionality and looking at the over-identification potentially of white students. Is it possible that the reverse is true, that we're under-identifying other groups?
Yeah, and so that's what we've talked about this and mulled it over numerous times, is how do you, part of our professional development, but really parent development too, right, is working with families and ensuring that they understand the referral process, they understand the evaluation process. What do evaluations mean? When their student is struggling, what should they do, right? And I do think that there are some families for sure that we miss, and so we're looking at that. I mean, there's no concrete data that, yes, we've missed a whole, but the assumptions can be made, right? And looking at other driving factors of families that can go out and get an independent evaluation where others do not have the means to do that, and does that skew our data so far as those kids coming to us for the eligibility process? So it really is talking through and educating families on that and staff on that too. Yep. Great question.
Is the calculation strictly mathematical, like how we're over-identifying white students with SLDs?
Yeah.
So we're saying we got 100 white kids, 10 of them are on SLDs, and we got 10 of another group, or 100 of another group, and only 2 are.
Yes.
And why isn't there 10?
Right.
So it's
Which complicates it, right? Because you don't want to say, well, we're not going to qualify those students, or those white students,
Yeah,
but
and
you also, are we missing, to your point, are we missing some in other subgroups, and how do we capture that?
My question is, too, if we look at the data on kids with disabilities, do we have a greater percentage of kids with SLDs than other districts?
Yes. Nicole did a lot of digging on this. Her spreadsheet is like amazing. It's beautiful, actually.
I mean, I would say I'm not within our district. SLD is definitely a category.
One of the primary.
Yep.
we have more kids.
We have a lot of
Hopkinton has more than
students.
other similar districts.
I would have to pull the specific data from other districts to give you like 100% answer on that, and I don't want to do that right now. But I will say, as we're looking at just Hopkinton, SLD is a high percentage of our eligibility qualification. And also that does make sense, right? So SLD, specific learning disability, has a number of kind of subcategories underneath it. So it talks about basic reading, it's encoding, decoding, reading fluency, reading comprehension, written language, oral expression, math calculation, math problem solving. So there's so many areas that fall under a specific learning disability. So it makes sense. But at the same time, it's not that we're over-identifying an SLD, it's specifically for white students with SLD. So it gets a little bit complicated.
You mentioned parents. So to identify, so it's not just testing in school or a teacher picking up on something is missing with this child. It may be mom or dad saying, hey, I think my kid's behind or having trouble with X, Y, or Z.
Absolutely.
So it's largely parent-driven, or what's the calculus with the school, the district identifying versus mom or dad?
Yeah, I would say when I looked at, and I should have brought the numbers, when I looked at this when I first entered the district, the referrals made by parents actually outnumbered the referrals made by school staff, right? And so then we need to dive deeper into, okay, how many of those referrals did the student then qualify, right? And our parents, are they accurately seeing how their student is doing, or is their student struggling, and we just need to support them through Tier 1 measure, right? Why I say we need more parent education is I do worry that there are certain subgroups where parents aren't advocating as much for their students. And do they know to contact student services, a team chair, their own teacher to say, I'm worried about my kid, or are those parents relying on thinking, the teacher knows my kid best, and so they're going to tell me if they're struggling, and even though I might think they're struggling, the teacher hasn't said so yet, so we're just going to wait. And that's where I want to educate parents on advocating. If they see a concern, say it, right? It might mean that they're just struggling. It might not mean they have a disability, but it's better to have that whole team approach than for one, the school to be waiting for the parent, or or for the parent to be waiting on the school. I think there's some parent ed that we could do out there.
And if there is a struggle or a gap, I think that's where the MTSS comes in, is asking good questions about, is there a different instructional approach we should be taking with the student, or is there a gap we can shore up earlier? If it is in decoding, is there something we can do in grade 1 that we can close that faster, and then we can actually close it, so then there isn't the foundational skills gap that then grows into a comprehension skills gap that is wide and a lot harder to close once they're older. And it's just the unconstrained skills are so much harder to identify, and not that the other ones are easy, but so much harder to remediate, and there's so many parts to it, so it just becomes very complicated. So if we can just close them earlier, that's where MTSS is huge. But if Tier 2 can jump in, or if they need 3, then it's that we can close it before it becomes, an ocean. Like, this is a puddle at first, maybe.
And is this where your task forces may be looking at just the overall trajectory of literacy programming to see if there's a model that may better help identify all the students who need the support?
Yeah, because you'd have, if there were, so I'm not saying that that's what they're going to say, I don't know, but say there
or
were.
maybe if they had better instruction, that fit everyone's needs early on, they wouldn't need to be identified because they would never fall behind.
Or even just an assessment that, in 2nd grade, it's that program gives you something that gives you really good data that's Tier 1, that's common to every student. So then that every student's getting it in October, and you have data that's more classroom-based data as opposed to standardized. And it will just give you better information faster. So then you can intervene in October saying, I'm going to try something for 6 weeks and see if this makes a difference for this kid. And it might look different. You might get something that someone else doesn't, but that would give you that information that the CBMs give it to you, but the other kind of STAR really doesn't. It doesn't give you progress monitoring data in the same way as CBM would. Not to get into the weeds about that, but
yeah, and it does seem like the earlier any of these students who need extra support are caught, the more effective any intervention will be because of all the neuroplasticity reasons. And then if the educators are comfortable with the different teaching approaches, it also supports all the kids better.
Correct.
Yeah, and I would say, you know, when we say catch early, that doesn't necessarily just mean like a K1. Sometimes that challenge becomes apparent in grade 6, right? Or grade 7, and we want to make sure we're intervening right away. Because that's where the challenge starts, right? So I know you know that.
Right, and I
just
didn't
want
mean to imply that there's anyone that's missing second graders or fourth graders or fifth graders, like whenever it presents.
Yeah, and that's why that whole district-wide of what does that MTS look like? Let's make sure our LSTs are consistent. And then when we do have a referral for special education, what do our evaluations look like? And so we've done, purchased a number of assessments that we have now in our repertoire that we didn't before, specifically for reading and writing. So really getting into some of the executive functioning parts of those areas, which we know is an area of challenge for some students. And then we have next year coming an updated version of one of our major assessments that is renormed, which will provide us a really fantastic evaluation tool for our students. So we're excited to bring that to the district.
That's great. Thank you.
One more question.
Sure.
Go ahead.
So, and I think it's something, Jess, that you said towards the beginning about kids that with multiple disabilities, that kind of coding as a support for one versus another. Is that, would that be like, for example, a student with autism that also has a specific learning disability more often being selected as one or the other when you're checking the box of what they're receiving
and it's not
services
that you're not categorizing them with both,
Okay.
but what does that IEP really need to wrap around the most, right? And you're embedding both within.
Sure.
But what Desi's really talked to us about, right? And we see this a lot with actually SLD paired with health, so ADHD. You'll see a lot of that pairing. And so what for that student in particular, when you're sitting down and determining eligibility, is the driving force on the need for the IEP. Very well could be SLD, but it very well could be attention first, and that kind of skews your data in a sense. So you're not identifying SLD, because that's not what we feel is appropriate, but you're also identifying what the driving category is for that child. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
You can look at my own child's experience, which is being mentioned. We're part of the problem.
So all I care about, I'm sure everyone cares about, is that if a student needs services, that they get it regardless
100%.
of identity.
Yeah.
And you mentioned that we want to make sure we don't identify a white student just so we lower the percentage, right? Just so we get underneath that 4%.
We don't want to not.
That's what
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. Yes,
Yes.
we don't want to not, and just
Yes.
no, we
Exactly.
want to get.
Yes.
Okay, other than a directive from you, are there guardrails in place for that?
That's why we talked about the eligibility training piece,
Okay.
right? Because we do really want to ensure that this information's out there. This information's public on Where We Land Dispro. I never want a staff person or special educator to feel like, I've got to get the data down. How am I going to do that, right? And we did hear, at our training, multiple, aside from us just not categorizing, what do you want us to do, right? And so it is in everyone's mind. So that's where we work on, listen, yes, this matters, but it also matters that we are servicing a student appropriately. So if it's not going to bump us down in the first year or the second year, so be it. That's why we're being totally transparent in our data, is we feel like we're doing right by students, but we also know there's work at looking at our practices and our policies to get better at it and make sure we're accurately identifying. And if we're going over in the data, then why is that, and what can we do to kind of help support?
So is another way to look at it that it may not be that we're, and I think, Nancy, you brought it, that we're not over-identifying white students. It's just, because it sounds to me like we're identifying a group and saying, hey, we have too many in this group getting services. That's how it feels to me.
So that's what can be tricky, right? You don't necessarily know that for sure, right? So what we need to
Right.
do is make sure we're accurately identifying, we're accurately
Right.
coaching and training our staff, and we're also getting to our families too, so that we're a team. So I think, to your point, I think I hear what you're saying is, is it just other subgroups we should be identifying more in, so that
Right.
data kind of equals out?
Yeah, and is it
Could be.
cultural that
Yeah.
some groups don't want help? And they're not going to identify.
And that could very well be
white
the
groups
case, right?
Raise their hand more and say, hey,
Yeah.
I want my kid to have health. Okay.
Yeah. That could be the case, and that's why we want to make sure we're
Yeah.
doing as much training and movement as we can.
Okay.
And a lot of like the nitty gritty of the whole process is
Yeah.
we had those conversations,
Okay, great.
right? Like that's how we kind of developed and thought, well, there are things that are within our control, our locus of control, and there are things that are
And
outside
things
of
that
it.
are
And so
outside of it.
what
If
can
a
we,
group-
what can we control and
Yeah, I mean, there are cultural reasons for not. Sure. Yeah, okay, got it.
Do we help parents understand where their son or daughter should be so that they themselves are saying, oh, wait a minute, there is a problem, as opposed to not being quite aware of it?
I think one of the moves we have made this year was to send STAR reading reports home K through 5, and I think that has been helpful in kind of giving information, more data to parents about where their child is, that's standardized data, or more, this is where they are.
Do we provide, so sometimes, you get, I hate numbers. And, if somebody sends me a bunch of numbers, I also have no executive function. And they won't gel for me.
The report is geared towards families, so it reads to explain to you what this means. So it's not just a number. So it says
Okay.
to you what this might mean.
Okay.
Send you my document.
Yeah, it's helpful to see just where this, and then
Yeah.
teacher communication. If there's something that the teacher sees that is concerning at grade levels, that there are places where there seems to be something that the gap is getting wider, or it isn't just developmentally appropriate.
good.
Because there is a spectrum of when kids learn to read and how easy it comes to them, and some kids need a lot more explicit instruction. It doesn't mean they have a disability, but it might mean they have a disability, and then they might need something like OG or Wilson. And
Right.
if that's true, they need to get it. So we're not going to ever say no.
Yeah, and helping parents identify that my kid has something's not quite right here.
Yeah. And it's hard as a parent when you
I would imagine.
you don't know where they're supposed
Yeah.
to be in grade 1 or 2, or what it's supposed to sound like. So it can be really tricky to say, is there something going on, or is this typical? Is this a
Right.
typical reading behavior, or is it atypical, and I should be pushing harder or asking more questions? I think that's really hard.
Has there been any thought of sharing the STAR data scores with the 6 to 12 parents?
My daughter's seventh grade.
Yes, we have. So, great question. I think, well, first I'll say, I think it's been a really nice move that we've been sharing it with the elementary this year. It has not been a past practice. I think we've talked a lot about it, and I think it shows transparency, right? I do think that the middle school are having conversations about what that would look like. At the high school, it's not happening to the same, and I'll let Ms. Ellen talk about it as well, it's not happening to the same degree across all classrooms, the STAR assessment. And sometimes it's focused on certain classrooms and certain grades. So it wouldn't be sent out to everybody, because not everybody always is taking that,
So it's not given, just so I understand clearly, all kids don't have it in English and math.
Well, Yeah, well, do you want to talk a little bit about how we set it up?
We've used it historically in grades 9 and 10, and at the high school, it works better as a screener, more so for really our MTSS to say, is there a place that we think we need to offer more tier 2 to students who are struggling in ELA or math? That's typically where we do it. So if we do have a math coach or tutor at the high school that we can sign kids up for. We have directed study. We have different tier 2 supports that we try to use with kids, more so in 9 and 10. And the MCAS drove it for a while, just kind of, what that test tells us a lot of good data about kids. So even looking at the grade 8 scores combined with STAR, where do we need to kind of support kids? So that was what we usually used it for, more so than anything else. Because by the time they're that old, it's better as a screener than anything else. I don't know that it really tells you that much because of what reading at a 7th grade level means compared to 8th when you're talking about a reader. It's not that valuable to tell you much about them, because sometimes it's the difference of a few questions where it's like, oh, now you're reading at 10th grade level.
I understood. I guess I was thinking about in specific kids who maybe didn't do as well in the MCAS in 8th grade, and the parents are thinking, is there a problem here that needs to be addressed as they're moving forward? the STAR data is another point to
Yes.
be able to,
Yeah, and that's what we use it for at the high school. So it's really we use 3 data points to talk about should we do more tier 2 with students or should there be something that we're exploring. And I've met with a lot of families after grade 8 scores because when the 10th grade were the ones they had to pass, families would get that letter in grade 8 saying your student failed or you are in the partially meeting. You need to consider this because 10th is going to count. That letter looks different now. So I think parents are less anxious about MCAS, but they definitely used to be. So there'd be a lot of questions of what are we going to do to ensure they pass. Yeah, so we did a lot to kind of answer that question too and saying, oh, they're going to pass. We're going to get them there.
thank you.
Anything else?
We're good.
No, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
All right,
Thanks,
have
everyone.
a great night.
Yeah. And I'll just say, as they're leaving, you can tell we have a really passionate
Yeah,
group. That's not part of this team, and I want to thank the whole team, but particularly these 3. They've worked tremendously hard around this, and we're fortunate to have them. So, looking forward to the work ahead.
We always love guests. Get lonely. All right, middle school furniture, Mrs. Rodnick.
Thank you. So the town meeting in May, there is a capital article for classroom equipment for the middle school. And this is articles for desks, chairs, storage units. And we obtained pricing using the collaborative Massachusetts Higher Education Consortium, MHEC, which is just another collaborative contract where we can get our pricing. The middle school looked at samples, and we were able to choose a configuration that made them happy. Red Thread is the distributor that will use the MHEC pricing. The total, the desks and chairs will cover actually 21 classrooms, 19 classrooms at 25 each, and then 2 smaller classrooms at 12 and 13 each. So a total of 21 classrooms we'll be able to do. And the storage units are for the 10 classrooms where we're doing the floor, where we had to pull out the cabinetry.
Yeah.
So the total pricing for this came in at $222,000. The warrant article is $217,000. So the proposal is to charge the overage to the building use revolving. And just as a reminder, oh, not this one, never mind. So I'm looking forward to the approval for this. It is 2017 or 2027 money, but we need to order it now for it to come in the summer.
And ordering it now could be canceled if town meeting for some reason did not approve it.
If town meeting does not approve it, then yes, it would be canceled.
So we're short a lot of money on insurance. Do we
That's
need?
operational though.
I got it. Is, even though it's in a different bucket, where are we at with middle school desks? How bad do we need them?
Well, so this article will come out of free cash,
Okay. So this is a standalone,
standalone.
Yeah.
Correct.
just curious, I assume the desks work at the middle school?
They do work.
Oh, were you here when we looked at the pictures of the way the desks all look like a garage sale?
Yeah, it looks like a garage, yeah.
And that some students don't fit into them.
Right, because they're so teeny.
Okay.
Like a hodgepodge sometimes.
I get it. Might not look great. I'm just saying that's some financial issues.
Functionality, I guess.
We'll get to
So-
that, we'll get to some of those.
Yeah, but keep in mind, the town policy tries not to spend free cash to balance operational
I
needs.
got, yeah. I got there's some silo differences.
Yeah.
All right.
So I move to proceed with the middle school furniture procurement contingent upon approval at the annual town meeting.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Great. Assistant Nutrition Director.
So this is a new position that we are proposing. When free lunches were introduced a few years ago, the number of meals that we are serving in all the schools has grown exponentially. So this position would be to really get back to creating that touch point with the students. So it would be the development of a student wellness committee, really getting them involved in the school lunch and the menus. Also expanding our farm-to-school partnerships and moving to really be in charge of the maintenance and repair of the food service equipment, making sure those vendors are coming in and coordinating all of that with them. And also the marketing and communication strategies, really promoting the nutritional benefits of meals and why you're choosing what you're choosing. And as well as, testing menus, recipes, things like that. So really getting back more to the touch point to the students. And this position would be 100% funded through the food service revolving.
Do we have a director of food now?
We have a director. This
Okay.
would be an assistant.
In the food service revolving is the money that we're receiving back for the meals that, in part, the meals that are, we receive the money from the state,
Correct.
as well as the money that they collect for the fruit snacks, the extra drinks and things that are not included in the free.
Correct. It's a fully self-operating component.
Right.
But the 100,000 comes out of our budget.
No,
Comes out of whose budget?
the food service revolving.
That we get from the state.
So the state pays for it.
Correct.
Correct.
And so this position is fully funded by the state.
By reimbursements
reimbursements,
for
in theory,
the
yeah.
free lunch program that we're running.
So we raise our hand and say we're going to offer free lunches.
They're already
Everybody have
offered.
They're already up.
State, okay, the state mandates, we offer free lunches. And then we have to do it, but then they'll also fund an assistant position that doesn't cost the district a nickel.
So every student that gets lunch, we submit that count to the state, and the state reimburses us for the lunch. So they're not mandating or looking at staffing levels at all. So this is using the money that comes from the state reimbursement for lunches to run the program.
Okay. Who's paying for, so the state's paying for the lunches,
Correct.
and we're saying we serve 2,000 lunches, and they cost $1 each. And we bill the state $2,000.
We just give them the counts and they give us the
they-
reimbursement rate.
Okay.
These reimbursements pay for everything. They pay for the food, they pay for the equipment replacement, they pay for all the staffing, the director, all the staffing that's in every kitchen. Like I said, it's a,
Well, the number of students.
I thought we had to redo their contract, the
cafeteria.
cafeteria staff, and they're outside of that.
nope, it all comes from the same fund.
And for clarity, so all of the expenses that we're using for our food services program, staffing, food, equipment, all that comes from that revolving account, and that revolving account cannot be used for, say, buying
Desks.
textbooks.
No.
No.
Yeah, yeah.
It can only
I
be
need
used.
I need further clarity. I'm a little confused.
No, that's okay.
Okay. We don't pay for any of the food. The district doesn't pay for any of the food, staffing, or equipment for any of the cafeteria workers or directors or maintenance or any of it.
Correct.
So
It
this,
all comes from this fund.
which is funded by the state.
Correct.
But also it's the sale of the food though, too, right? So that every.
How many students are?
For the à la carte.
Yeah.
So
Right, because students can.
lunches
purchase-
alone are fully reimbursed, but if students want to buy a water
something.
or an extra snack, they actually do pay for that.
And it shows up in your My School Bucks.
Yes.
Yeah.
I get that, okay. It's not costing the district anything.
Correct.
Correct.
Budget
It's cut.
neutral.
Got it. Okay.
I missed what you said.
Budget neutral.
Oh, yes.
Okay. All right, got it.
Just one question, why do we, not every district would need a assistant school nutrition director, correct?
It really is looking at the size of the district.
Okay,
so
we're
it-
big enough that we really need that position.
Correct.
Okay.
And we really want to develop more interaction with student and student buy-in and the farm to school, all those connections and collaborations.
Okay.
Also want to highlight, just as it popped into my head a little bit, it's related but not exactly, but that one of the ways that I know that we have been able to operate more efficiently is one of the things that you did, which was to take it from being operated by a service and having it done in-house.
Correct.
This is funded through state taxes.
No.
No. Why?
Yeah.
Where's the money
Some,
gotta
it's
come
some
from?
state,
Okay,
some
well, yeah,
state
okay,
taxes,
yes.
some federal reimbursement.
Yep.
Yeah. Which is why
It's not coming out of the sky.
it's federal taxes.
Someone's
yeah.
paying for it. I mean,
Yes.
we're all paying for it. I get it. It's
Yes.
100,000's a drop in the, it's
Part
a
of-
rounding
part of the-
error, but
Part of
Doesn't
the
seem like
state,
it-
part of the state
it's
budget
need.
is funding free lunches for schools.
got it.
Okay, so we're looking at a promotion. right?
Yes.
I'd like to move to approve the position of Assistant School Nutrition Director starting in FY '27.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
Is that
No,
an
you're not
app?
opposed, or
No, I'm not opposed.
Okay, you're in favor. Okay,
Money guy.
was that a vote in favor or an abstention?
yeah.
It's an abstention. I'm in favor. That's good. Okay, I'm a yes. It seems like a position we need, but it's not our money, so. It's our money, but not our money. I got it.
Okay. Mr. Bishop?
Great, moving on. Yeah, so the next few things on the agenda. I'm pleased to let you all know that we've had successful contract negotiations with two of our new administrators in the central office. The first is the Director of Student Services. The second is our Chief Financial Officer. So we'll take one at a time. I'm looking for a motion to approve the Director of Student Services contract starting July 1, 2026 through June 30th, 2029.
I move to approve the Director of Student Services contract from July 1st, 2026 to June 30th, 2029.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Great.
And then looking for the same, a move to approve the Director of Finance/Chief Financial Officer contract, also starting July 1, 2026 through June 30th, 2029.
I move to approve the Director of Finance, Chief Financial Officer contract from July 1, 2026 to June 30th, 2029.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Great. On to,
On to budget. I'm also going to need the Apple TV again, Donna, if you can. Thank you.
that was a different,
All right, and you all have this slideshow accessible here. So I do want to start by saying this is not an update that I was hoping to bring forward tonight. Last Friday, Ms. Rothermick and I met with the town manager and town CFO to discuss the increase in the health insurance rates that the town recently received. The town approached the FY27 budget planning for a 9% increase when it comes to health insurance. That's kind of in the range year to year, the last number of years, and so that's why we've kind of moved forward with that percentage in mind. And then they received quotes and estimates recently of between 18% and 22%, which creates a deficit that's approximately about $1.3 million. And so since receiving that updated health insurance information on Friday, our admin team has been pretty much working around the clock over the weekend. All throughout this week, we've had multiple admin meetings. Ms. Rothermick and I have met with all the directors, all the principals. It's trying to map out what our next steps are forward and navigate this. It's been a pretty challenging last few days. You know, I know we put forward what I thought was a really thoughtful, student-centered budget, and then to have to revisit this work at this stage is disappointing to say the least. But that's the reality, and much of this is out of our control, which I understand. So we also realize that we have a responsibility to respond to this new information. And believe that we are the first group that's actually talking about this publicly. I do believe that there's an appropriations meeting early next week and a select board meeting on Tuesday that they'll also be talking about this as well.
We would be the biggest contingent of people impacted by this.
Yeah, we'll talk about that. Yeah, yeah. Yes, we make up, I don't know, roughly 4/5, I feel, of the budget in the school department. So, yeah. So what I wanted to do tonight is just kind of walk through the adjustments that we've identified to address the gaps and the subsequent reductions from our initial FY27 budget that I presented to you back in December.
Sorry, Evan, can I interrupt for a second? Before we get into how you guys are going to fix it.
Yep.
I thought, what's the expected is 9% increase. Is that consistent?
That has been consistent year to year for
year to year.
Yeah.
That seems like, to me, an insane percentage year over year. Okay.
Yeah.
And then,
Healthcare costs have been
No, it's
crazy,
18, yep.
yes.
okay. And then 18 to 22% is remarkable. So
Yep.
do we know why? Have we looked for other companies?
Yeah. So
Where does
we met with
all of that stand?
Yeah.
I had all the same questions.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Kyla, Susan, and I were on a call this afternoon.
Yeah.
Where the town laid out kind of the process. You know, they work with Brown & Brown, I think is the name of the organization, to do their negotiating. I think what we're finding out is that there is a rise in healthcare costs, one, but there's also a utilization issue as well that is contributing to this in terms of the percentage. I've talked to a number of area superintendents, and all the percentages are in this range, unfortunately. Maybe not as high as the 18 to 22, but upwards of double digits.
Essentially, our health insurance provider saying, you guys use too much health care, and we're going to jack up your rates.
I think there is
More than the premiums they
Yeah,
told
more
me
in the
today
premium.
meeting.
So we have reached over the 100% threshold, and so that kicks you into.
And is there
Yeah,
a,
more than we pay in.
right, and was there something that's happened in the last year that drove that spike to us using more?
I think it's just claims.
Claims.
So.
Right, but is there, we have a lot of cancer, do we have a lot of?
I mean,
so
we
don't
can't-
have
yeah, we don't have access to that,
to
I'm just,
but
I know you
there-
can't specifically say
There
that.
probably are trends that
Okay.
have
Yep.
put us over.
Over.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, they call it the medical loss ratio, the MLR, which if it exceeds 100%, which we have this year, that's when it gets us into this category.
And shopping around,
We've done, that's part of the process that the town does. Yep.
and that's,
Yep.
you mean we did that prior?
So
Yeah, so they actually came in
CFO
at
today told
24%.
us, she shopped around, they asked for quotes for, a lot of people wouldn't even quote us because they don't like,
They don't like our utilization rate.
yeah.
Yep.
They got one other quote.
And it's gone down from 24% to 22% was actually what we were talking about on Friday. It's now down to 18, which I think is probably the lowest.
From the existing, right, they came in and said it might be 22 to 24, but it's
Yeah.
now 18.
Yeah, that happened over the weekend. We initially were told 22 to 24 on Friday, and then by Monday it was 18%.
And we can expect 9% next year?
That's what we don't know. We've had
Hard to
this
say.
conversation. It's hard to
Yeah,
say.
But it could be 18 again.
Could be.
Right.
Could be.
Is,
Is there things within what we cover? Do we cover more than other districts, more than most? Do we cover a ton of stuff, and that's why it's driving up the prices so much?
well, so one of the things that they have to do is convene, there's a committee called an Insurance Advisory Committee. And so this committee should start meeting, starting now, all through the year up until next year, to look at, what are our claims, where are the trends, what is happening, and then they have to look at.
An internal group.
An internal group.
Yep.
So a representative from each union.
Yeah.
And then look at, are there plan design changes that can be made to bring this down? but any of those plan design changes then have to also be negotiated with the unions. So
Right, I get it.
there
It's
are-
tricky.
There
Yeah.
are things that they can look at, but it isn't anything they can negotiate and change now.
I mean, this does not seem sustainable.
No.
No.
Does not.
No.
So something has to change.
In looking at this, such a large amount, and I'm thinking about the employees of, well, I mean, of the town also, but of our employees specifically, are they also feeling, like, does that jack up their end of it as well?
Yeah,
I mean, that seems like a lot for somebody to, if that my employer came to me and said, your insurance is going up 18%, would be a hard thing to hear as well.
Yeah, so as Mr. Bishop said, we're the first group talking about this. So communication has to come from the town in terms of exactly what those premiums will be to staff. We have not done that. I mean, that's not something we do, and so, yep, staff is, I think, will be surprised.
Yeah.
Are they able to supply you with, without releasing individual data, but any trends that they're seeing?
I don't know that they will share that with
Yeah, I don't know
us.
if they will.
I don't know.
But it seems like, God forbid we would have an unhealthy building that was driving things. You would think
I agree. I think
that they could at least provide
if-
trends.
I know they can't share people's medical information, but from a macro level, hey, there's a trend that in building XYZ, there's a lot of people who have cancer.
Yeah.
Information I think we'd like to know. And is that's what's driving that? Or
Pulmonary dysfunction.
something.
Yeah, because I taught in a sick building once, and it was bad.
I mean, there has to be some way for us to get that information without violating people's privacy.
Yeah, I mean, they wouldn't obviously.
Right.
Right.
But,
Yeah,
you
but
know,
as
so.
Ms. Rothermere said, I think if that advisory committee is meeting more regularly, they can have conversations about different claims. and
Yeah.
Maybe if we could see this a little bit coming a little bit earlier, right? I feel like part of the stuff that we're struggling with now is when we found out about this.
Yeah.
And then having to make a decision
late.
in 3 weeks. Not that the number may have changed, but if that group was meeting a little bit more regularly, which we're recommending to the town that starts ASAP, then maybe we could have seen this and had conversations as a group ahead of time.
Yeah.
But you also indicated that districts around here are communities are getting the same kind of
Yep, increase.
jump. So everybody has unwell people.
Well, I also just think that medical
medical
care.
cost, yeah.
and
Yeah,
medical
it-
costs
absolutely.
And prescriptions and everything else has
Yeah.
increased. And so, add all those things and, we don't have the science behind the numbers.
Right.
so
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm
We
just
only
curious
know
if-
what we know at
I
this
get
point.
that, but I'm just curious if there's a way to find that out, or is it, guess what, now 80% of everyone's on GLPs, and those cost a ton of money, and it's covered, and that's driving up costs. I
And
think
that's what that insurance
yeah,
advisory
group would be
committee
doing.
needs.
They will be able to
needs
find that
do.
out.
Well,
Oh,
they need to do that.
Yeah,
yes,
they would do that
because
work in that group.
All
All
of
right.
that would be part of plan design change.
Okay, great.
So I would hope that the town would be able to work with this group to maybe make it so that, help it so that next year we're not faced with an unanticipated 18%.
And to have it come out after you already put your budget
Well,
together and everything.
yeah.
I think that's
the-
why, I know that this group has met maybe once a year, from my understanding, but I think this needs to be almost monthly,
Yeah.
quarterly, to have these.
Yeah, quarterly, I think.
I
monitoring.
think
Yeah.
that's standard practice in other communities that I've
Yeah.
found out through this process, so I think it's something that we're going to really push for.
We normally have the opposite problem, where it's not a problem when it is the other way, I guess, but where what's been budgeted is higher, and then it's sort of the last minute surprise as we're negotiating what we're going to cut out of our budget. The health insurance comes in lower than what has been projected. So I guess that caught me by surprise this year.
I mean, and there's just a quick search shows the Massachusetts Health Policy Commission in December published that there's significantly rising costs all around Massachusetts, and they're calling on different things to happen at the policy level of the state. because of things like administrative capacity, healthcare prices. So, I mean, it's certainly something that's happening all over. It is a really huge jump, though. And I presume that the plan offerings we're trying to keep, I know that's another thing that sometimes happens, right? The plans cover less, and therefore it costs the same.
Yeah.
And so I presume that this is partly because we're trying to keep the same coverage for our employees.
Because if you,
At this time, they can't do plan
Without-
design
without-
changes.
Yeah.
So
because it has to be negotiated.
it has to be
Yeah.
negotiated, so the plans that exist is what this cost is and will
Right.
stay.
So the piece that we have control over.
The piece that we have control over, we continue.
Sorry.
Yes,
I didn't mean
no,
to make
no,
an
it's.
abrupt shift, but-
So, like I said, we've been meeting quite a bit as a group, trying to figure out a way to, put forward things that, even though we know we need them, that we can put forward in these reductions to be able to make this number. Like I said, it's 1.3 million. The expectation is the school is not taking all that 1.3 million. We're going to put forward what we feel like we can, or at least push down the road for another year. That's what you're going to see coming up, is a lot of these things are just going to be pushed down the road, because we still need them, but maybe we can put them to the following year budget. With the town, other departments, and maybe even utilizing free cash has to make up for the rest of this money. And so that's going to be some of the conversations that are happening next week at appropriations and select board. So this slide here kind of breaks it down into buckets where we are taking some of the money in some of these reductions. We did our best to try to not cut any staffing.
Very important.
And if any positions were cut, it was some of the new requests that we put forward. So they're not anything that's already in the budget where there's an actual person being cut. I think that's really important. So you can see here in technical, we'll go into each one of these different buckets. There's a technology bucket. We talked a little bit about our .5 ESOL position at Marathon. There's some cuts at the middle school, buildings and grounds, revolving accounts, contracted services, and expenses. All of that averaging up to that number at the bottom that you see, that 629,287. So if we jump into, yeah, go ahead. Question.
Oh, sorry, I think I'm jumping ahead of you.
Okay. So if we jump into the technology reductions, this kind of breaks down what it would be that we're, delaying, so to speak. So we're delaying the radio replacements. They're ready to be updated, but we think we can probably push that for a year. Delaying some projector replacements both at the middle school and the high school, trying to reduce some spending on some devices, scaling back on professional development, and holding off on the new office furniture for the newly rented space that we've talked about earlier in the year. And again, I think most of these are primarily deferrals and kind of pushing off to the short term, but we will need to revisit this in future budgets. From the expense accounts, this kind of touches upon a number of different areas, but we were able to reduce around 97,000. Areas like our legal fees, we're trying to reduce those. Again, we're targeting professional development. We're doing a lot of models this year where we're having our own staff do the professional development. We had a full day in November where we didn't bring anybody in. We had teachers kind of teach each other, so that'll be a model we'll continue with. I think it's more effective and less cost effective.
Can I ask a question just about the legal piece? So are we reducing what we're projecting we're going to need next year, or are we finding a strategy that somehow we don't need as much legal representation?
Well, we haven't used.
Yeah, from legal, we really just look at trends and try to use like a 3-year average. And the good news is we're coming in below budget each year. So I feel comfortable that we can lower this because our use of legal has been lower. So.
You also see some PD accounts with the high school principal PD account, athletic PD, some Hopkins General Supplies. We feel like we can, things we can get maybe through this year's budget for next year, and some of our summer curriculum stipends. Again, they do represent tightening in areas that, that do support the overall system and the effectiveness of the system, but I think some areas we can trim down on or at least push to the next fiscal year. Buildings and grounds reductions, it's about 282,000. This includes deferring projects like upgrading the high school art room sink, which has been on the list for probably 3 and 4 years in a row now. Just continue to push that down the road. The construction of the new high school assistant principal office. Right now, we still have the high school assistant principal in the budget. We're going to look at maybe either having 2 in one office or use another space somewhere in the building as opposed to doing some construction in the main office for that. as well as the upgrades and improvements to the 7th grade middle school bathrooms. That'll be something that is needed, but something we can push off. And then we're also increasing the use of the revolving funds to offset some operating costs. I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, the building use revolving is one of the accounts that, of our revolvings, we do have capacity to increase the use. So that's something that will help us to reach this number.
And those are fees for people coming in.
Correct.
Yeah. Next slide is the new request cuts. As you remember, we had some positions across the district. These are two that, after a lot of conversations and some really difficult decisions, we will not put forward in the FY27 budget, but we'll look for these positions as we move forward. It is the full-time 1.0 visual arts teacher at the middle school. If you remember, we put that in the budget for class sizes. We have a really big middle school, 3 huge classes next year at the middle school, so we'll have to manage the large class sizes in some of our visual arts classes for a year before the 6th grade then moves over to Charleswood. And then the marathon ESOL position is 0.5. We felt that was best practice. Again, that's something that we will look to put back in the budget hopefully next year, but something we could probably do with. Again, we want these all, but could we do without them for next year? I guess that's something we have to have these tough conversations about. The next is around just contractual services. We identified 30,000 in here. Much of it revolves around services that have shifted a little bit over time based on student needs. And in some cases, we now have the ability to internally kind of provide those services. At least we think for this upcoming year. So that is an area that we felt like we can cut a little bit, working with some of our directors and principals. So when you get to kind of the overall where we are here, the reductions based on what we propose, which is that number in the top left corner, we are now at this 71.207 million as opposed to the 71.8, which is now an increase overall of 4.92. If you remember our increase prior to this process when we came through in November and December and presented this was 5.84% increase, right? So there is a reduction there. So the next steps, I think we've talked about it a little bit already, is, we are putting forward this. We've met with town officials. There's going to be an appropriation meeting on Monday, a select board meeting on Tuesday. There still needs to be another $600,000 that gets cut through other departments and maybe through free cash. But this, at this point, is what we feel as a school district we can contribute to the reductions to make sure that we're meeting this financial expectation for us with the.
And they did highlight some of that for us in the meeting today about where they're cutting it's not just us.
Not just us, yep. But we do have 4/5 of the budget, so I think there is an expectation that some of it will come from the schools.
Are either or both of those meetings going to be joint meetings with the school committee?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. In terms of, can we just talk for a minute about the visual arts in
Yes.
the middle school, the class size?
Yep.
First of all, I actually wanted to start with fantastic job pulling your team together to be able to make these numbers. And I'm asking not because I'm debating it, but just looking for clarification.
Yep.
The class sizes in that grade are, by adding the visual arts, it would have taken some of the burden off of not just visual arts classes, but the ability to have kids, smaller class sizes in some of the other classes as well. Am I misinterpreting that?
No, you're not misinterpreting. It's some of the related arts classes. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
but it doesn't include then a trickle into like math classes or
No.
English classes?
No.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
So we know the amount of money that is needed to cover this gap, right?
Yeah.
Are we about in a position where we've covered our percentage of what that is?
We feel this is what we brought forward, is what we're comfortable
Okay.
bringing forward, which is about half of the number that.
Okay. And they hopefully come up with
Yep.
the other.
Other departments, which I know that they've been working, just like we
Yeah.
have, with their people and trying to make sure that they make the cuts. And then I think there's going to still be a gap that hopefully, because of the time frame of this, that the select board will be open to utilizing free cash. But if not, then we have to continue to have this conversation.
Do we know if there's additional, I know the certification of free cash, and my memory of it is not crystal clear from back when it was discussed, if there was additional free cash that was not allocated. Do we know that?
There is.
Okay. Yes.
They're anxiously awaiting our vote tonight.
Yeah.
Well, I wish that we were not here. I feel like we had
Exactly.
a great process leading up to this, and it almost felt like it was too easy. And it
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
It
But-
was.
And everybody was very conservative on
Agreed.
their needs
Yeah.
and what they
Because
had,
there really was-
not
yeah,
being
it's not a lot.
highly
Yeah.
aware
Yeah.
of that.
Yeah.
So
We were already at a difficult budget.
Yeah.
that's,
I make a motion to move to approve the revised FY27 budget for $71,207,200.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? No.
Okay, all right. And so that brings us
We
to...
begrudgingly do this.
Yes, we do, and agreed. And, like we said, we have to adjust to the information that we're getting, but it certainly is disappointing. And I know a lot of people put a lot of effort and work into the budget. And like you said, I thought we had a really strong budget.
Yeah.
The process was transparent, and, it's unfortunate that we're in this place. So hopefully this advisory committee will get together more often. We'll be able to kind of address this, and hopefully we won't be at the same position next year.
I also said during the meeting today that the communication to employees, I hope goes out that we still do value our town
Yeah.
employees and hope they do use their health insurance.
Agreed. So thank you. So that brings us to the end. So I'll recommend that the school committee approve the items by consensus as listed in your packet.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That's
Check on
okay.
my kid, make sure he's up
Is
there.
that you?
Chris is making phone calls.
I'm trying to babysit my kid at the same time.
That's fair.
By remote.
I can't find him on a camera, so I'm trying to call his iPad. Yeah.
Good
Well, if the
Lord.
call gets rejected, you'll know that.
No, that's all I need is a rejection.
All right. You want to read it?
To comply with or act under the authority of MGL Chapter 30A, Section 21A2, specific to conducting strategy sessions in preparation for negotiations with non-unit personnel and the school physician, because discussing in an open meeting would have a detrimental effect on the school committee's bargaining position, and move into executive session for all that, and adjourn an executive session.
I second your motion.
Thank you, Nancy.
All in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned.
We're entered into executive session.